July 3, 1944, Normandy. A Sherman from the 747th Tank Battalion noses into a hedgerow, engine roaring, treads clawing at dirt that refuses to budge. The hull rises, the gun tilts uselessly, and a waiting German anti-tank gun snaps a shot into the exposed belly. Fire swallows the lane. 4 men are gone before anyone can move. The wreck sits crosswise, a burning plug in a green-walled maze. This is how a sergeant turned Rommel's beach steel into teeth that ate the Bocage and unlocked the breakout. Stay with me as we go from wreck to breakthrough, and subscribe for more battlefield turning points. Engines on. Weeks after the landings, the war in Normandy did not look like a sweeping arrow on a map. It looked like fields turned into rooms, each one locked from the inside. The hedgerows were ancient earthen banks, about 3 to 5 feet high, topped with knotted shrubs and roots like rebar. Generations of farming had pressed them into walls. Artillery chewed leaves and splashed soil, but the banks held structure. Shells clapped above, branches fell, and the walls were still there. Standard practice told tankers to ride over obstacles with momentum. In the Bocage, that practice set them up like targets in a gallery. As the Sherman climbed, its gun tube pitched skyward, its front lightened, and the belly faced ahead. German gunners stayed patient and cut them open. Infantry felt alone when the tanks balked. Squad leaders crawled through gaps and found nothing but wire, covered arcs, and pre-planned mortar fire. Every field took blood. The next field looked the same. A platoon traded bursts and grenades for hours to capture a few dozen yards, only to meet another bank. By late June and early July, 1st U.S. Army measured progress in hedges, not miles. Some divisions bled down to skeleton strength. Omar Bradley needed a way to connect tanks to infantry across the banks. Headquarters produced memoranda and sketches that did not move the wall. The German Tulwar defense relied on that routine. Anti-tank guns hid behind knolls or inside farmyards with slit views, waiting for a nose-up silhouette. Troops tried dozers, but the work took time under fire. They tried blasting, but charges were scarce and loud, and after one gap, the next wall waited. The problem sounded simple and felt impossible. A tank had to cross a hedgerow without climbing it. Sergeant Curtis G. Cullen, Jr. watched this grind as part of the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron. He worked patrols, watched tanks stall, and saw friends carried back on stretchers. He was not a designer by trade. He was a soldier who asked the question no one at a drafting table could make urgent enough. What if the tank did not try to get on top of the bank at all? What if it bit into the base, stayed level, and punched straight through? An idea like that needed more than imagination. It needed steel thick enough to slam roots and dirt without folding, and a way to attach it fast to many tanks. Steel lay everywhere along the beaches. The Atlantic Wall had scattered heavy obstacles along the tide line. Angular traps of flanged iron meant to tear hulls and hold landing craft. Teams scavenged those obstacles and learned their weight with a cutting torch. The pieces were thick, tough, and conveniently shaped into angles. Cullen and a small team mocked up prongs in a motor pool, welding 4 teeth into a prow that looked like a set of boar tusks bolted to a Sherman's front. They mounted the structure to the tank's lower front, tying into the most solid frame they could reach without ruining the suspension. Everything had to survive a 30-ton shove. Angle mattered. A blunt face slammed and hopped. A pointed angle pierced and dragged the nose down into the dirt. The blades got sharpened with torches and grinders. Crews learned they needed to hit low, where the earthen bank met the field, not at mid-height. The aim point was the seam where roots and soil knitted, tightest. Once in contact, throttle application mattered too. A steady push beat a wild surge, Track speed had to match the bite of the teeth to avoid hopping. In tests, the teeth sank, the hull stayed level, and the hedge split with a popping sound. Mud bowed outward, and the tank moved like a battering ram. Gunnery stayed relevant because the tube did not spike upward. A tank that stayed level could fire straight ahead the moment it broke into a field. Infantry noticed the change right away. Instead of waiting for a tank to flop into a field with its commander blind behind leaves, they could follow a tank through a hole and meet fire with fire. Workshops exploded into action along the coast. Welders, mechanics, and scroungers set up lines under tarps and in captured sheds. The source material often came from Rommel's own defenses. Czech hedgehogs and other steel obstacles, fished off the beaches, became raw stock for the cutters. Pieces were measured by eye and by chalk, marks. Jigs held angles while welds puddled, sending sparks onto damp Normandy ground. Each unit improvised slightly. Some cutters had 3 main prongs, others carried 4, with smaller gussets to stiffen the structure. Bolting patterns varied with the tank variant. Crews talked across units, pointing where brackets held best and where cracks formed after a few hedges. Bradley approved the concept and told subordinates to keep it quiet. Surprise was a weapon now, as real as steel. Secrecy shaped the production rhythm. Cutters appeared on tanks under camouflage nets, and crews practiced on backfields with muffled engines. Radio nets started to share a new vocabulary. Rhino up. Bite low. Lane marked. Engineers worked beside tankers to mark the best approach to each hedge. A 5-yard stretch of base offered a different bite than a rocky corner. Some hedgerows sat on shallow stone foundations. Those needed a different touch. Sometimes a short pickaxe hole, hand dug at the base, sometimes a smoke screen for a reposition. Tanks paired their new teeth with discipline. Drivers kept their first gear steady and their throttle proof against panic. Commanders crouched low to watch for a glint of muzzle. Infantry squads learned to fall in behind the right track at a safe offset, avoiding the swinging branches and the dirt thrown back by spinning grousers. A breach became a choreographed move. One tank bit, one tank overwatched, and riflemen ghosted the flanks to catch any Panzerfausts moving in. The moment the bank cracked, the Overwatch gun snapped shots across the gap. The point tank rolled through, already slewing to present armor to known firing points. Platoon leaders began to map lanes not as roads, but as hedgerow mouths. A field had 4 walls. A unit could make a new door wherever advantage lay. This shifted power. German gunners thought in terms of obvious gaps and farm tracks. A sudden breach placed a Sherman at an angle no sight picture had prepared for. Combined arms tactics gained rhythm again. Mortars laid smoke tight along a hedge, while a Rhino tank moved up, and the smoke hung in the still air inside the green. Artillery shifted from trying to flatten banks to suppressing likely gun pits on the far side. Time-on-target missions rattled nerves rather than trees. Communications discipline reduced friendly fire. Colored panels on tanks and marked tape lines told assault teams where to drift. The nickname arrived naturally. Those prongs looked like a rhinoceros horned for war. Crews wore the name with pride because it meant forward motion. There were trade-offs. The cutters added weight and took a pounding. Welds had to be checked, and edges dulled after a few hedges. Maintenance crews built a battle rhythm around new inspections. Every night, cutters were re-welded, bolts retorqued, and cracks hunted with a flashlight. Doctrine rewrote itself in pencil first. Field orders noted that tanks could now enter anywhere along a hedge, so infantry leaders had to be ready for sudden flanking. The Germans noticed the damage without understanding the method at first. Holes appeared where none had been, and fire discipline faltered. Bradley's staff spread the device quietly across 1st U.S. Army. Hundreds of Shermans wore steel teeth by late July. With tools in place, planners built an operation to capitalize. Near St. Lo, air power would break the lid, and teeth would punch the walls. Operation Cobra opened on July 25, 1944. The ground shakes, dust hangs like a sheet. Pilots lift away and leave a raw horizon. In the lull, a line of Shermans glints with strange ironwork under the hedges. Commanders stand half exposed, eyes tracked on a strip of earth 10 yards ahead. A driver edges forward until the prongs kiss the dirt at the hedge's base. The engine note settles. The tank pushes. Soil compresses, roots resist, and then the first pop sounds like a muffled rifle shot. The tank does not rise. It eats forward, level and ugly. On the far side, a German gunner peers down a sight set to catch a climbing hull. His angle is wrong by a life-and-death margin. The Sherman bursts through, gun flat, and sends a round into a hedgerow corner where a muzzle flash once flickered. The bank behind him slumps like a breached levee. Infantry slide through the gap, tight behind the right track, stepping over splintered roots and clotted earth. A bar pins a ditch as riflemen fan left. A second tank takes an offset bite 10 yards away. 2 new doorways appear in a wall that had been treated as fixed boundary for weeks. German machine gunners pivot, but the angles betray them. A gun that covered the gate now faces empty hedges. A gun that watched the lane is taken from the side. A platoon leader calls for smoke on a farmhouse corner and marks a fresh lane with a panel. Mortars thud and throw a white curtain where a Feldwebel once peered. The Rhino tank keeps moving. It treats the wall ahead as material, not terrain. A third bite places it behind the German line without telegraphing the route. An anti-tank team sprints to intercept and meets a field cut differently than expected. The runner pauses at a hedgerow corner and dies under a coaxial burst. Commanders adapt in seconds. A tank that has just broken through swings its hull to face the suspected gun quadrants, and a second tank pushes through to exploit the shock. A pair of engineers follow with Bangalore sections for wire inside the field. The hedges have been turned into fences. Fences are less frightening. Machine guns that once laced every gap now gasp for targets. The assault is not coming through the gate. It's ripping a new gate beside the barn. As units push miles of front, the sound repeats, engine steady, metal biting, roots popping, tracks crunching forward. Each breach complicates the defender's map. A battalion commander updates his overlay. Arrows he expected to follow. The road now thread through fields, crossing hedge lines diagonally. Radio chatter tightens. Rhinos through. Infantry on the right. Watch left ditch. The rhythm is new and aggressive. On the second day, German reserves drift toward the shatter line and find their own hedges unreliable. Holes appear where they thought a flank held. A Panther tries to cover a lane and is flanked by a Sherman that ignored the lane entirely. The first shot into the Panther's side is decisive. The mission expands from cracking lines to skipping between strong points. With each unexpected breach, German cohesion unwinds another turn. An American tank troop reaches a crossroads that had anchored fire plans for weeks. They do not wait for the gate. They make their own and appear behind the crossroads defenders. With the hedgerows treated as problems to solve, not immutable walls, momentum takes root. Tank infantry teams roll forward by choice instead of by permission from the terrain. By July 27, the pattern is obvious to everyone in earshot. Holes open, units flow, firepower arrives fast, and the defender's chance to catch up fades. The Bocage still punishes careless moves, but the monopoly on initiative has ended. German gunners fear any hedge face at any moment. In one farm cluster, a tank stops to check its cutter, 2 bolt heads bright against newly scratched paint. The crew taps cracks with a wrench and moves again. Nearby, a wounded hedgerow sags. Birdsong mixes with the metallic ringing of welders, already preparing more teeth for tanks queued behind. By July 29th, the pace feels different. Lanes multiply. Maps get messy in a good way. Command posts shift forward to keep up. The first week that once measured in hedges now measures in miles. Reports from St. Lo speak one word over and over: through. Trail units follow marked breaches, widening them with dozer blades and cutting back branches so supply trucks can nose into fields that used to be bunker rooms. Air-ground coordination tightens for the new geometry. Pilots look for dust bursts at random hedge faces. Controllers call directions by field counts, not road names. By August 1st, 3rd U.S. Army activates and pours into open country. The maze loses its power past the last major hedge line. Back in the fields, the Rhino-equipped Sherman sit with chipped prongs and dented gussets. The tools look crude. The effect is anything but. Immediate reports moved fast after the first breaches. Officers walked the lanes, counted the split banks, and debriefed crews on throttle, angle, and follow-on fire. Records vary on the exact numbers. Within days, momentum proved itself measurable. The ground gained in that week surpassed what had been achieved in the previous month under the hedgerow system. The change mattered because it restored combined arms timing. Tanks kept guns level, infantry flowed, and German positions lost the luxury of pre-sighted, predictable kills. Fewer tanks rose, belly first into ambushes, and fewer riflemen crossed open gates under machine gun cones that had been comfortable for weeks. Doctrine did not return to the pre-Bocage playbook. Units wrote procedures for breaching any vertical obstacle with improvised teeth, smoke, and overwatch. Post-war training and engineering captured the lesson. When terrain locks you into predictable acts, alter the contact geometry and make your own door. In the end, decisive change often started at the lowest level and climbed fast when it worked. A field soldier's fix, built from an enemy's steel, became an army's advantage. If you want more hard-edged stories of battlefield problem-solving, subscribe and join me for the next episode.